What's up? Welcome in the CHGO Bears podcast presented by PointsBet. Use code CHGO to live your bet life and get up to $2,000 in free bets. Welcome in Adam Hoge, Nicholas Moreano with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. Both of us were at Hallis Hall today. Bears OTAs open to the media for the first time. So this is really their first opportunity to get on the field this offseason with not only the veterans, but also the rookies that they drafted, bring everybody together. And other than some tweaks here and there to the roster, which we will see, of course, throughout the summer up until week one, this really is the core group of guys that they have. So practices started yesterday. We are allowed to be there today. Nick, what's up? How'd it feel? Bears going to the Super Bowl, right?
I mean, obviously, day 2 of OTAs. I dressed appropriately, I think. Adam Johns did give me some crap. He's like, I can smell your leather jacket from here, Nick. I'm like, come on, man. At least I dressed right today.
Wait, he did see that? He did say that to you?
Yeah, yep. He moved over slightly. He's like, yeah, I can smell the leather jacket from here, Nick. I'm like, I don't know what to say to that.
See, you know what? I thought he would have thought better than that because he was the one who showed up in shorts today and was cold.
He did.
So,
he did. And Adam,
really
I didn't even get a chance. Yeah, that's true. Adam, I didn't even get a chance yesterday from the softball game that we played yesterday. Your good friend, is it Ernie who does the voiceover? Yeah. So he came up to me. He's like, hey, where the hell is Adam Hoge at? Where's Adam Hoge? And then I'm like, well, his son's got a baseball game of his own tonight. He's like, well, you got to get him out here. So he wanted me to relay that message to you. And this is the first time I'm actually doing that on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I love Ernie. Yeah, Ernie's the one who does the voiceovers and the open for the Hogan Johns podcast. So we should get him to do some stuff for CHGO, quite frankly.
He's got a great voice. Like, just hearing him, I'm like, man, you could tell that, he's got the voice for it. So,
and he's a cool dude, definitely down. And he loves the softball. Big opening victory for CHGO. What a start for the expansion team. Gotta love it. Good job by you guys.
Yeah, we came back. What was it? 6 unanswered runs, and I finished 2 for 3. Got my 2 singles in the day. Got a really look.
Okay, what was the out though? What was the out?
Man, okay. Well, here's the funny thing too. I kept every time I hit, I kind of let go of my bat, and the ump was like, "Hey, you got to hold on to your bat." So the third time I go up there, it was a pop fly that got caught, but he said if it wasn't, I would have been out regardless because I let go of my bat again. That's the one thing I got to work on, you guys. Just not. I don't know what it was. I just every time I let it go behind me, I just trying to run to first. And
I'm not even making this up. We had a kid at our 7 and 8-year-old game on Saturday who had that problem. Come on, Nick, you're better than that.
Yeah, 27 years old. I don't know, hang on to the bat. I told the up too, I'm just gonna run with it. I don't know if you ever seen the bench warmers where he's running up to the first baseman. He's like threatening to hit the first baseman for it. But yeah, that's what I got to work on, Adam. Not letting go of the bat and like destroying people's shins. So I'll work on that for next game.
All right, yeah. Always see, those are the games you like. You get the victory, but you look back at the tape and you go, we can still make this correction. You could still get better. In your case, apparently you got like a Brett Boone bat flip that you need to control.
Exactly.
So settle down on those singles. All right. Let's jump into some things from Bears OTAs today. I want to address one thing off the top because I've already seen multiple comments about it. The Jalen Johnson press conference today. Why Joe's asking, why did the media go so hard on Jalen Johnson? There's another comment from Reed. I haven't watched the JJ interview, but heard there were some stupid questions. All right, full transparency. I was not in the room for that specific press conference. I did go back and listen to the exchange that he had between it was him and Jason Leisure from the Saints Sun-Times. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you were in there. But the question was essentially, Jalen, you had a good season, but the secondary did not. Like, how do you feel about all that? Or how do you want to bounce back from that? Essentially, I mean, that's not word for word, but I'm paraphrasing the question. And he took exception, or he got defensive, let's say, about the idea that the secondary was bad. And he was asking like, okay, well, where did we rank? Like, he wanted specific numbers. And I heard Courtney Cronin jump in there with an actual stat. Like, she was ready to fire back. That was impressive. And like Jason was like, well, whatever metric you look at, like, you're bottom 5, the secondary is bottom 5 in most things. But I guess by what I'm getting at, correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like fair questioning, and I'm not exactly sure what Jalen was upset about.
Yeah, it seemed like definitely a fair question, and he zeroed in on, again, like you were saying, the part about the secondary being bad, as opposed to the second part, like, what do you make of playing
But it was
in
bad.
that type of, yeah, exactly. Like, you can look
Yeah.
at a lot of the stats, they will reflect that. But he did give I think his answer, though, once that kind of all got cleared away, is like, there were some mental lapses, didn't finish plays, things like that. So I think he eventually got to it, but he did take to account like that specific part and wanted the specifics of how bad they were. And I guess it's interesting that, I don't know, I figured you would know. Like, as a player, like, how did we do last season? Or maybe, he just doesn't look into those kind of things. But yeah, I think Patrick Finley also chimed in, like, where they ranked in terms of quarterback passer rating. Like you said, Courtney Cronin gave a stat. But yeah, to me, it just felt like Jalen Johnson was a little bit, I don't know, on edge a little, just in throughout the entire press conference a little bit. He did, um, I think, open up a little bit in terms of some questions, but it just felt like after that moment there was a little bit of a edginess in the room.
Yeah. I feel the same way. Noah says he probably felt like the media was trying to get him to throw his teammates under the bus.
I, I didn't think that was like, again, that's not what Jason's intent was with that initial question. Again, he just wanted to know how he kind of handled that, being in that kind of that room, and like I
Where
said, Jalen
you have a
Johnson.
good season, but as a
Mm-hmm.
whole, the players around you don't. I think that's a fair question. But I just wanted to address it off the top because we were immediately getting questions about it. And I do, sometimes it's tough when you're not in the room. If you're just watching over, I know a lot of our fans probably sitting here watch the press conferences online too. Sometimes you lose the context of the questions. Sometimes questions are taken the wrong way. Nobody wants to answer questions about how they suck.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to do that either. So I understand it to a certain extent, but yeah, anyway, I don't think it was that big of a deal. Other takeaways from practice today. First of all, we should start with attendance because people do wonder about these things with it being voluntary, off-season training activities. But Mario Edwards, Robert Quinn, and Al-Qadim Muhammad were not there. I think at this point, we can assume that, especially in Robert Quinn's case, I don't know that we're going to see him until mandatory minicamp, but I don't think there's anything else going on there. If it's mandatory, I'm assuming he'll be there. Maybe the same thing with Mario Edwards. I don't think this is that big of a deal. And I did appreciate how Matt Eberflus handled those questions today. Look, it's voluntary. Would I like them here? Absolutely. What coach wouldn't? Coaches want their players to show up to practice, but it's voluntary. They don't have to be there. Everybody moves on. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's just, when you have three players on your defensive line that show up, you get it gives other guys opportunities, right, to kind of see what they look like in there. But you would also like to see, even if it is just a second day of OTAs, what that, I think complete front four actually would look like with guys that are projected to be starters. So, yeah, again, what Eberflus said about it, that you would like to have them there, but it's voluntary, and that, just in case anybody forgets that, like, they don't have to show up to these things. They have other things going on, and like you said in Robert Quinn's case, he's Eberflus said he's done a lot of good things in this league. Like, I don't think he has any. There's he'll be fine in terms of when he comes back and being ready for training camp.
Yeah, I think so too. Was there something else in the Jalen Johnson thing? About how Eberflus praised Kyler Gordon, but then
Yeah, okay, so that one actually, that was, Herb Howard, who always asks some really good questions there, asked him about, like, when with Kyler Gordon, and we do have a graphic that will show up later in the show what he's talked about him, making plays on the ball and things like that. Are there different expectations for you, in like the risks that you're able to take in the last season, and Jalen Johnson kind of said in the defense I was playing in, like, because he was shadowing the number one wide receiver, he didn't have those opportunities to kind of take as many risks as he wanted to. And now he's got to see what he can do. What's his role going to be in this defense? So
Yeah.
it could change. But yeah, so that's where that question was going to. And now the expectations for Jalen Johnson, what his role is going to be, and whether or not he'll take more risks, maybe potentially getting interceptions with this new role that he's going to have in Matt Eberflus, Allen Williams defense.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I guess maybe even I need to go back and listen to some of that stuff, but I think this is much to do about nothing. Probably in May, Jalen Johnson obviously didn't appreciate the questioning. It's all right. But the head coach did praise Kyler Gordon today. He kind of went out of his way to do so. Matt Eberflus, and he kind of, he I don't remember the specific question, but he sort of emphasizes multiple times on his own, saying, I will say this. And he said, Kyler's been lighting it up the last 2 days. I'll just tell you that the guy's got tremendous ball skills. And it was one of those things where you could tell he meant it when he was saying it. He wasn't just throwing fluff out there. And I think we saw it. It always helps when we can see something with our own eyes too. Kyler Gordon did have interception today. At least I think he did. It sure looked like he did. We were really, really far away today with a bunch of giant human beings in between us and where the plays were happening because they were on a far field. So I'm going to assume his feet were in bounds because I couldn't really, I'm talking hundreds of yards away. But it sure looked like he made a nice play on the ball. And let me check my notes. I'm pretty sure that was on Trevor Siemian, just so everyone immediately would say there was an interception. Did Justin Fields throw the interception? Oh, no. Is he a bust? No, this was Trevor Siemian. That was a Trevor Siemian throw, I believe, and Kyler Gordon made a nice play.
I do have in my notes here, Adam, that Kyler Gordon did have a nice pass breakup with Justin Fields as a quarterback as he's rolling out to the left towards the left sideline. Gordon does make a nice play on the ball, but something else that Matt Eberflus said, what they're kind of focusing on, especially because they're not in pads, are body control and showing the attributes that way. And when he said that, before he kind of mentioned Kyler Gordon, I'm like, well, who's somebody who shows good body control? It's Kyler Gordon out of any of these guys because of his background in, kung fu, but also competitive dance. That's a guy that knows how to contort his body. And he's talked about that too in previous press conferences and has also been asked about it. So if there is somebody that should be showing out despite being a rookie, like this is Kyler Gordon. This is where Kyler Gordon should show some of those flashes. And so far, so good through 2 OTA practices. He's kind of been doing that.
Yeah, good. And not only that, but we saw the cramps issue back in rookie minicamp. So good to not see that pop up again or be anything worse than that. I hate that the Kevin White thing ever happened, but I swear to God, anytime I hear it sucks because it's like honestly like a player could just have a sore calf or something, and I just feel like I can never trust John Fox. Who's not here anymore, but it's like it's like okay, I like when something like that happens, I need to see the guy back on the field at least a couple days later, or I start to worry, was there a pre-draft thing going on, blah blah blah. So in this case with Kyler Gordon, it seems like everything's okay, and not only that is he's out there, but he's making plays. And we talk about this. I talk about this every year, Nick. First impressions matter to me a lot with these rookies. Now, I put a little bit more stock in it even more so in training camp, especially when the pads go on. But even like a week into training camp, I feel like a lot early on. And so this time of year where it's OTAs, you have to be careful. Because I remember one year where Devin Hester was running around as the number one wide receiver, making a lot of plays, and Brandon Marshall was that Brandon Marshall? I don't know if there was an overlap there. Well, he wouldn't have been the number one wide receiver. I think I'm confusing 2 different years. I think there was one year, whatever. That turned out to obviously not be the case when Devin Hester was the number one guy. He never made it that way. So you do have to be a little bit careful. But I think when a guy like Kyler Gordon shows up on campus in Lake Forest and starts making plays like that, you can feel good about it at least.
You want to see it too. Like again, like what Eberflus was saying, show the body control. Gordon's showing that. I see some comments in here too. Adams, people are asking about who was in the scrum, the little skirmish that happened in I don't know, midway through the practice. So we know LaCale London was identified as one of the guys. We don't know who he got into it with, but Matt Eberflus did talk about his point of view and what his perspective on kind of the skirmishes that happen. He says one, just not going to tolerate it. You have to have emotional control, mentality like a boxer. He kind of put it out, pointed to like you got to be able to control yourself, even though it was a small incident today just wants to keep that in control moving forward. I just think about someone that's currently not at Bears practice, Mario Edwards, losing that control multiple times throughout last season where he got penalized, I think 3 or 4 times for those personal foul penalties. So that's going to be Matt Eberflus' approach. You don't want to have, well, I think he said Bears on Bears or Bears fighting Bears, whatever he ended up saying, something along those lines. And that's what kind of happened, what led to the scrum. Don't know exactly. Again, we were far away. I brought my binoculars, like I said I was going to, Adam. I couldn't see anything because, like you said, there are giant human beings on the sidelines that you can't see through. So it's kind of tough to identify what's going on and who's involved at all times.
Yeah. Look, this was not a big deal today with the tiny scrum. It's going to happen. The only reason why I think this is a story at all, and I'm glad that Mark Grody asked the question today in the press conference, is because this is a new coach. This is a new coaching staff. This was an issue in the past with some players who are still on this roster, as you just pointed out, Nick. How is this going to be addressed? Does it bubble up into a bigger issue in the future? Because sometimes little stuff like this can carry over to another practice. It happens a lot in training camp when the pads are on, things are a little bit hotter, everybody's kind of crankier, and you get worn down in camp. And then one thing that happens on Tuesday leads to a bigger blow up on Thursday. And so how these coaches shut it down matters. Now, pretty much every coach is going to say what Matt Eberflus said today. I think Matt Nagy probably said it at some point. It's what you really do about it behind the scenes. So,
true.
And to your point, like Mario Edwards not even being there today, probably has no idea this is even happening unless he's watching the show today. What's up, Mario? If you are, I doubt it. So, but again, like we couldn't really see that well. What I do know is it certainly did not look like any punches were being thrown. And I think as long as it doesn't get to that level, it's okay. It was when you got to the level of helmets are being swung or people are punching helmets, which is even dumber. I don't know if it's dumber than using the helmet as a weapon, but it is dumb because you can break your hand if you punch a face mask hard enough. It's really not smart.
Or if you're like Martellus Bennett throwing down Kyle Fuller that one year. Like, was that the first year he was drafted to? I can't even remember if that was his
Fuller
first
might have
year.
been a rookie.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, there's the first round draft pick being thrown down to the ground. Like, things are going to get heated, but like Matt Eberflus is saying, you got to have that control because if it's carrying out, if you're doing just like if you're practicing right now, getting those mental reps and you're practicing it to a routine, like, is that going to become something that blows over in a game because something's happening? So like you said, Adam, probably all coaches are going to say that, but at least they're instilling it now, and the players will know exactly what the consequences are and what's kind of like the approach that's going to happen when those things do happen.
Yeah. Couple other things from I got a couple nuggets from Matt Eberflus we'll get to in a second. In fact, one thing I know our fans care about and I want to talk about because I have some strong opinions on it, and you probably know where I'm going with that. But first, Lucas Patrick. Can I go ahead and like nominate him already for the Media Good Guy Award? Like this guy shows up, is thoughtful. I like him a lot already. And it's not just because he's answering questions and he's entertaining, but if anybody here got a chance to listen to his press conference, you probably know what I'm talking about today. And he was the same way in his introductory press conference. The reason why I think it matters more than what he's saying to us is he comes across like a guy who is making an impact as a veteran in that Now, I'm not just saying offensive line room, but that definitely does matter, especially when you have as many rookies as they brought in and 4 draft picks in the offensive line room. But just as a whole in that offense, like they need leadership. They need guys to be not only vocal leaders, but set the tone on that O-line, play with a physical nature, and just the way he talks, the things he says. Granted, you got to back it up with action, but I can see why, and this is kind of a bigger picture conversation too. I think in general, a lot of us, including myself sometimes, getting a little too caught up in big names and the amount of money that is being thrown at some of these players in free agency. And everybody's kind of looking at that and being like, oh, they're being cheap on the O-line. They're not giving Justin Fields enough help. And instead, I think we need to pay, not that that doesn't matter, but we also need to pay attention to fit, right? So look at upside, look at character, look at the culture, look at how a guy fits this outside zone running scheme that they want to run. And understand that if you, and Lucas Patrick got into this a little bit too, if you know what you're doing first and foremost, you can play a lot faster. Yep. And how many times across all position groups in that last offense that we just witnessed did it look like players didn't understand what they were doing? So it starts there. I don't care how talented you are. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be a good fit into the offense. And as a GM, if you can bring more and more players like that in, it's possible to be functional. I'm not saying high-powered top 5 offense. You do need playmakers to have that, but you can certainly be functional on offense with that. I think we're maybe not putting enough stock into that sometimes with what Ryan Poles has done with this unit.
No, that's a really good point there, Adam. And what Lucas Patrick was saying is that even with the younger guys that came in, drafting those 4 offensive linemen on day 3, he's competing with himself because those guys are going to ask him a lot of questions. So he needs to know, and he believes that he needs to know the answers all the time. And so he's not only just competing on the field, but competing within himself to make sure he's the most prepared offensive lineman out there, so that when these younger guys who are going to ask questions come up to him, he has the right response. And, as somebody that is coming from Green Bay to Chicago, and there's obviously being the starting center, he just puts a lot on himself to have things right. And I do appreciate that and how thorough he is with answering some of these questions. He was asked about the comparison of like Aaron Rodgers, Justin Fields. He's like, I can't do that. Like, that's not like a fair comparison because one guy has played 16 to 17 years and, Fields is here, but he does have a presence to him. I'll say, just from being in the amount of conferences we were with him so far, but he does have that sense of responsibility, and I'm sure that carries over to some of the younger guys and, the starting guys that are currently on this Bears offensive line.
I want to share this one quote with you from Lucas Patrick. He was asked about the 4 draft picks on the offensive line and what he wants to see from the line as a whole now that those players have been added in. He said, every day, just get better, compete, and get tough. I'm so fired up that our GM is a former offensive lineman because I think he gets it to the core what it takes to build an offensive line. And it's tough competition, smart, just like guys who love football and just want to compete. And I think it's great. I mean, bring 30 guys in. We can only have 5, and it's only going to push guys further. It's going to push me further. I'm going to push other guys further. I can't think of a better scenario, even for me as a veteran, having so many young guys that they see different things or they are asking me questions, and I got to be even more on top of my game and what I know mentally, because I know they're going to ask a ton of questions and I have to be right. So all around, there's a ton of great things. I feel like there's 2 worlds that are existing, right? Like, and this happens a lot in the NFL, and I get that, and probably neither one is completely right. But I do feel like inside House Hall, they have a completely different view of like what this offense can become, even with the personnel they have now. than the outside world. And I'm not saying that view inside Hallis Hall is completely correct, because trust me, we just lived through a whole situation where they thought they had everything solved, and obviously it wasn't. So I'm not trying to give them too much of the benefit of the doubt, but I think we do have to give them a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt, especially because the GM is an offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. And I'll be the first to raise my hand. Of all the things with football that I think I know, offensive line is definitely lower on that list. And I'm not going to pretend to be an O-line expert. So, like, I feel like if this is the first impression that some of these players in that room have about what they're putting together, like, let's at least let this thing play out into training camp when we get more eyes on them and the pads go on, especially when the pads go on.
Yeah, and even Chris Morgan was talking about that a little bit. We can't properly evaluate exactly what we have in front of us right now until the pads come on. But to what you were saying, Adam, it's like, if there's somebody to trust with trying to build this offensive line, it is the general manager of the Chicago Bears, who was a former offensive lineman, and also the assistant Ian Cunningham, who also fulfilled that role. So I think when it comes to what they're doing, how they're approaching it, the guys that they did bring in, and who they signed with Lucas Patrick, and the 4 draft picks that they brought, like, we gotta wait it out before everyone makes any assumptions like, hey, Justin Fields is gonna get tore up back there. This line can't block. We don't know who the right guard is. There are still a lot of questions, but at this point, trying to make any quick determinations of what this O-line is in May, like, we're jumping the gun. So we just have to wait and see what it looks like in training camp, who's playing where, and then we'll have a way better evaluation and assessment of this offensive line that is still a work in progress.
All right, I want to talk about Matt Eberflus's philosophy on captains, because I know that has come up both on Twitter and in some of our comments on the show. And so I wanted to go ahead and ask that coach about that, and I did today. But first, got to tell you, the best way to support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app. Use code CHGO when you sign up, and if you do that right now, you will get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. But that's not it. If you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. I put in for 4 more shirts today, Nick.
Ooh.
2 for my wife.
There you go.
She wanted the script CHGO, our Bulls one, but I had to get, and I think she got the Red Star shirt, which is sick.
Good ones.
I got the Fire, and what was the other one?
Did you end up getting the Sky?
Oh, I did. That's
blue?
What it was. I got the Chicago Sky shirt because that one's sweet too. So you can get one of those shirts free when you get the CHGO membership. When you use that code CHGO on PointsBet, get it all, $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, free shirt, all from the CHGO locker. Just got to make a $50 more first-time deposit at PointsBet. And if you have any questions about that, if we haven't drilled it into your heads enough, you can email pointsbet@allchgo.com, and we will help you out. They got the live NBA same-game parlay. First time ever, you can build the perfect live NBA same-game parlay only with PointsBet, and you can boost those parlays. So you can watch the game live, parlay live, boost live, all with PointsBet. Online sign-up is available in Illinois. Download the PointsBet app right now. Register your account from start to finish, all from your phone. What are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. By the way, I know they take suggestions for bets. This softball league, I don't know. We might have to start setting lines.
Get a live stream going. Like, let's go. We're all for it. It was funny because Kevin texted me today while I was at Hallis Hall. Kevin K, our head of content here at CHGO. He's like, I just want to go hit some softballs. And I was feeling the same way. My girlfriend who played yesterday was feeling the same way. Like,
how's she do?
We're ready. She got a base hit, and then she scored off of a triple from first base. So, hey, we were doing bits and pieces there, all putting it together, but we're all ready.
Anyone hit any bombs?
We were close. The one triple that one of somebody had, like, it was borderline. Like, it needs to be 6 feet in the air or 6 feet in the air and then cross the cone that's out in the outfield to be considered a home run. We thought it was there. but it ended up being just a triple. So next
Freaking
game, which will
umps.
be Monday night. Monday night
Robot
we get
umps.
to go.
Robot umps.
Robot umps is right.
What Nick was trying to say is one of the ringers hit.
That's yeah. See, Kevin was like,
Yeah.
don't say it, Nick, don't say it. And I'm like, I got that ingrained in my head now. Yeah, we had a couple of ringers, and they came in clutch, so we'll take it. Also, I got to stop hitting and destroying every ump's shins going forward.
Yeah.
But before we go into talking about what Adam was saying about the schedule and things like that with Matt Eberflus, I have to tell you about CHGO.
You also have to give us your pick of the week.
Yes, you know what? I guess I'll do that now. All right. I'm on the Luka hype train, you guys, after seeing what he did to end the Phoenix Suns season in game 7. So I you don't have to listen to me, but Dallas Mavericks money line plus 175, game 1 coming in hot. Like, I'm taking the Mavericks. I think Dallas can win this game. Game 1 plus 75, get a decent amount of money depending on how much you bet, but I'm just riding the Luka hype train, and until that stops, then I won't bet on him anymore. So Dallas Mavericks money line plus 175 on PointsBet. Do it, win some money, hopefully. But Chicago sports fans, if you aren't a member of our CHGO family, what are you waiting for? Members will get access to all of our premium content from all of our great writers. You'll also get a free t-shirt of your choice when you become a member. You can get 4 like Adam and just kind of stockpile your wardrobe there with CHGO shirts. It's always a good choice there. And you also get access to the members-only Discord, the CHGO Lounge. And, of course, we have podcasts and live shows on every team, every day. So if you have it notified on YouTube, you'll know that we were going live at 5 o'clock and now our normal time at 11. So definitely do that as well so you don't miss any of the great podcasts we have. And, again, come join this amazing family that is constantly growing here at CHGO.
All right. Love it. All right. So I appreciate when our fans have questions to relay on to members of the Bears organization. And one I've gotten many times over the last few weeks is, what the hell does Matt Eberflus think about captains? Because this became such an issue under Matt Nagy. I get it. And, it didn't seem like a most pressing thing off the bat, but now that they're getting out there and practicing, I did ask Matt today about, is it too early for you to be looking at who might end up becoming your captains? And what is your philosophy on it? Are you a guy that wants to go season-long captains, have the same guys, or go weekly? Answer to the first part is yes. He's been looking at possible captains from day one. Leadership is very important. He gave a very, very good answer on that part of it. The other part, which kind of surprised me, is he said he doesn't know yet what he wants to do. And no, fans are very passionate about this subject, and so he at least left the door open for weekly captains. So let me be very clear on this, and I think I already probably have been. Personally, I like the idea of season-long captains, guys who are defined in that role. I'll take it a step further, which probably works a little bit better on the college or high school level, admittedly, than maybe in the NFL. But I also like the idea of kind of having a leadership committee that goes even beyond the just whoever your 3 captains are. Because typically you're going to have an offense, defense, special teams captain. But like he said in his answer, he's like, ideally you want one in every position group, every one of those position groups, which I 100% agree with. So I think what I'm getting at is that's what I would do. Doesn't mean that I cannot keep an open mind to the idea of having weekly captains. And I do understand the concept of it being something that is earned every week, because I think that can have a positive impact in practices and leading up to a game. As long as that word I said there is very important. It is earned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? When you don't really seem to have any criteria except for which one of your players used to play for that week's opponent, what the hell is that? That doesn't help anything. When Bruce Irvin's been on the team for 5 minutes and he's named a captain against the Seattle Seahawks, what are we doing here? So I'm not ready to go out and pow Matt Nagy or Matt Eberflus. That's the first time I think I've done that with him. I did it once with Pace. I did it once with Pace and Poles, which I'm still surprised it's only happened once. I think that's the first time I did it with the head coaches. So I'm going to leave an open mind because I want to see it play out. Again, my preference is season-long captains, but I'm willing to listen to an argument to weekly captains so long as it's actually something that is earned.
I'm on the same level of thinking with you, Adam. I think season long, just because I think that's what I think Bears fans are so used to when Lovie Smith was a coach, right? You'd see those season long captains, and then with Matt Nagy at the end, it's like when you see Jermaine Ifedi is the captain after the whole, Tevin Jenkins situation that happened against what was that the Vikings game. It's like, and then he's the captain next week. It's like, what message are you sending? One to your rookie and to Fields, like, and then doing that just didn't quite make sense. But I do like that season long if that's what Matt Eberflus ends up doing. Another thing that I thought was interesting in what Matt Eberflus was asked was about joint practices and
Yeah.
whether or not the Bears would be partaking in that with the preseason games that they have against Chiefs, Browns, and I'm missing whoever they play the first game. Seahawks. So he said there's one team potentially that they're kind of talking with. I'm a fan of the joint practices. Anytime you can see other competition other than your own team, I think that's beneficial in the long run just to see where you stack up, where you need to work on, things like that. It's obviously the Bears had the Miami Dolphins last season. We were able to get to feel, and look, they ended up with Jakeem Grant too. I wonder if those joint practices had any influence of just seeing a little bit more of who he was about.
It definitely had an impact. Yeah, they were on record saying that.
So things like that, you never know what you're going to see out of another team on somebody that's not being utilized on their roster. Could you bring them to your roster and do something else with that? So if the Bears do end up making joint practices happen with one of those three teams, I'm definitely for that. I think again, there's so many benefits of doing so.
I'm not terribly surprised once we saw the schedule, that the preseason schedule, that it doesn't sound like it's going to happen. For one, typically it's the schedule changed because there's now only 3 games. But so the Bears did it last year against the first opponent. The past it had usually been against the second opponent. So it would not be against the Browns as the last opponent. It's just too late in camp. So if you look at the first 2 opponents, I'm going to start with the second one. Seattle Seahawks, probably the hardest team logistically to pull joint practices off. You got to understand that you're bringing all this practice. You're bringing way more than you do on a road trip for just a game. You got to literally move your team facility into a different team facility. I have never been in the Seahawks facility. I don't know what kind of logistics they have there to even host another team, which is another thing you got to keep in mind. The Bears were not able to host another team until last year. They had to make a lot of changes. They had to create more practice fields. They had to come up with all this stuff to even be able to host the Dolphins. And even then, I don't know that it was as great of a situation as maybe when they went to Denver, because I think Denver had a lot more room. Whatever. So I don't know. And I tried to Google this earlier. I could not find any documented examples of the Seahawks even being involved in joint practices.
Okay.
In fact, what came up were some message board questions from fans being like, how come we never practice against another team in training camp? So I don't know if they've done it or not, but I do just know logistically the Seahawks aren't probably the best match. Then there's the Chiefs, which seems a little awkward. I now maybe on one hand with Poles' relationship with them, it actually would be a good fit. But then I don't know. I don't know. It just seems like with Matt Nagy, not that Matt Nagy has any pull over there, but Andy Reid certainly does. And I just them coming back. Remember the game's here at Soldier Field. So them practicing at House Hall, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about it a little bit too much, but it just didn't seem like a likely candidate for that to be the case.
Or maybe it is a likely candidate, Adam, and because of that connection there, who knows? But that would just be so weird seeing Matt Nagy on the other sideline and obviously
Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick
Mahomes would finally be at Halas Hall. Think about it that way.
Wow, that would be
Now,
something.
what I do wonder, because you're right, Eberflus did kind of hint there's one team that maybe they're figuring something out about. Now, maybe that's the Chiefs. Maybe that's somehow the Seahawks. I doubt it.
Yeah.
Teams have pulled off practices without a game before. So remember, there is like 2 weeks before you actually play a preseason game, and you could pull it off the week before. Now, that's pretty quick in the training camp to all of a sudden be practicing against another team, especially when you're trying to install your own systems as a first-time coach, new staff and all that. But, maybe it's something where, like, you have the Browns come in a few weeks earlier. And, I'm just throwing out a random team, but you end up playing the Browns later. You practice against them earlier, then you play. I don't know. In that case, it's probably a more local team, somebody closer. Probably not, obviously not one of your divisional opponents. So is it somebody like the Bengals or the Browns or something like that? Colts. Thank you, Noah. That's a great example. The Bears did practice against the Colts once. That was down in Indy. And the Colts, Matt Eberflus's team. So maybe there's there, but he did not sound that optimistic about it happening.
Yeah, so all speculation at this point, everybody. But like I said, I'm for it. Before we continue this conversation, again, I got to tell you about PointsBet. If you enjoy CHGO, one way to help us to continue to grow is to download that PointsBet app and use code CHGO when you sign up. Not only are you going to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000, but if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. And like I said, you do that, you also get a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content. And again, you'll get a free shirt of your choice from that CHGO locker. If you have any questions, email pointsbet@allchgo.com and we'll help you out. And in case you missed it, online sign up is available in Illinois. You'll be signing up with the fastest sportsbook, easier than ever, so you can start living your bet life in seconds. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
All right, couple other things to address before we get out of here. We also will take some questions. But interesting nugget from Bears running backs coach David Walker, who brought up that he has been having David Montgomery study some other running backs that he thinks are similar. And I followed up and said, all right, can you tell us one or two of those guys? And you could tell he didn't necessarily want to spit it out because this is where not only with coaches, players, but also media, when we start getting into comps, there's always people are like, no way, that doesn't make sense. But he is having David Montgomery study Jonathan Taylor, the Colts running back. And I'll give him credit because he pointed out the obvious. He said, minus the 40-yard dash time, they're very similar in their styles. And within 5 seconds of tweeting this out, I immediately regretted it because of the reaction to it. And I get it to some extent, but here's the thing. I understand where he's coming from. So their 40-yard times, just so people understand, Jonathan Taylor ran a 4.39. So, that's why he's second-round pick. David Montgomery ran a 4.63, which is pretty slow, quite frankly, actually, for a running back coming out. And you could say that's why he fell to the third round. You could also say he still went in the third round at that time. So he obviously had some special things about him that the Bears obviously liked, and there's no question that he's been a very good running back for the Bears. And as I've talked about on the show many, many times before, I don't think he gets enough credit. I also have pointed out, I think he got faster last year before he got hurt. Like, he looked faster to me in training camp. So the nice thing about 40 times is that you never have to worry about them again after you run them. Once you're drafted, you're on that team. You don't have to worry about 40 times. The bad thing is people like us now still bring it up because they still talk about straight line speed. But the reality is straight line speed for a running back really does not matter until you're out in the open field and you're trying to hit that extra gear. to get away and score a touchdown, which Jonathan Taylor has. And I don't think David Montgomery has that same level. But if you actually look at the style of running and how they set up their blocks, how they use their vision, how they break tackles, how they run hard, I understand where a running backs coach would look at Jonathan Taylor and say, hey, man, look at what this guy's doing. You can pick out some nuggets here and there in what you're seeing on film, and it can help your game. And that's all I was trying to say here. So I love it, and I like that he talked about it. I thought it was a very interesting nugget from the Bears running backs coach, David Walker.
I think, too, it's like those – don't you want to be watching tape of some of the best running backs in the league? Like, Taylor's one of those guys. And,
well, and
like,
by the way, players do this all the time.
Yeah.
On their own, whether the coach tell them, like, I can't tell you how many wide receivers you talk to. Like, I'm constantly studying this guy. Allen Robinson talked about that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, people are saying that's an outrageous comp because of the speed difference. Like, okay, well, you still can pick up other tendencies and, like you said, tidbits from other players' game and try to implement into yours. And David Montgomery has a lot of great aspects about his own game, but anytime you can add a little wrinkle, whether it's like being patient when running these outside zone plays. Like, yeah, you're gonna do it to benefit you, and you're stealing from others. That's perfectly fine. That's what all these players do. They're all kind of watching film on each other and seeing what they can pick up to add to their game. So I have no problem with that whatsoever. I did see here. I saw some Treston Ebner comments in here, Adam, and I did have him noted down. Like he kind of has like that wide receiver ability to run routes. And look, granted, they're running routes on air in practice. It's nothing too crazy, but Fields connected with him on a nice deep pass down the left sideline. I'm like, okay. Ebner definitely has in his game, so that would be a nice element to add to the running back room, being someone that can catch a ball deep out of the backfield. But who also was like, it was me and Herb Howard. We were talking about, I think Mark Grody got into it too. He's like, that blasting game, that fullback over there catching passes over it in practice. I'm like, he's doing that, which is it's just anytime you mention a fullback, it's like, oh yeah, the Bears have one of those. It's like, yeah, and this one can catch passes, and he's just big. Like once you guys see Kahir blasting game in person, like he's a full package, and if he can catch passes for the Bears, like only adds to what he can potentially do if he does end up making this 53-man roster.
I love you brought up the fullback. First of all, I saw that catch Ebner made. It was a great ball. I think it was on air. It may have, or it was 7-on-7s. But it was a good ball, and it was a nice smooth catch. Which goes back to what you talked about earlier with what Eberflus talked about body control. Trust me, man. Coaches pay attention to stuff. Just how smooth you are, even if it's just like one-on-ones or literally just going through individual drills, catching passes. But when a pass comes in and you got to go,
over the shoulder. Yep. That's not a difficult catch. I mean, that is a difficult catch. Sorry. It's not.
Well, it's something
that just happens.
Your number one running or wide receiver better be able to do it. But a lot of your running backs aren't going to be able to do it. And so for him to show that, I think it proved what we've seen on film so far with Treston Ebner, that he can do that. I had a great conversation with David Walker on the fullback position because I asked him, because I quite frankly, I hadn't gone like deep enough into his career where he's been and how many fullbacks he's had. So I just asked him straight up, I'm like, all the places you've been, how many times have you had a true fullback on your roster? He said everywhere. So he's just, so why do you believe in the fullback position so much? Because obviously a lot of teams right now in the NFL, they don't have fullbacks. Kind of a dying position, quite frankly. But, he explained it very, very well. When you have a fullback, you're creating an extra gap for the defense to have to cover.
Sure, yep.
And with this outside zone scheme too, you're making the defense stretch out, and they got to account for that extra gap. And he talked about how with this wide zone running scheme, I think this applies to most run heavy teams, whether it's inside, outside, but he said it's like a boxing match with body blows throughout a game. So having that when you hear him say he's always had a fullback, I'm like, wow, they're going to carry, like, this isn't just something they're doing. Like, they're going to carry a fullback. Like, Blasingame's, I'd be shocked at this point if he's not on the team unless he got hurt. So I found that very, very interesting. I love the idea of having a fullback. And another thing, earlier I went in the offensive line. I just think we're not, as a whole, not paying enough attention to the offensive scheme. They're going to run the ball.
Yeah.
And they have a good running back room. And now they have a fullback. And if they can do that, despite the protection concerns with the offensive line, it's going to help them protect Fields. It's going to help Fields. And you heard
Trevor Siemian also mentioned to Adam about leaning on the zone scheme and how that helps the quarterback. So
and
connect all the dots, you guys. They're gonna run the ball. It's gonna help the quarterback, and you're gonna be able to see, I think, a better version of this offense because of that. You're using all. Another thing we've heard from Getsy, from Siemian, from Andrew Janoko, all 11. It takes all 11 to run these plays. And that's kind of what you're seeing here with the players that they actually have. You're going to use the fullback. You're going to use your offensive line, the wide receivers to block so that you can get, this running game going, which in effect should help your quarterback on these rollouts that the Bears have been utilizing in practices. You see Justin Fields rolling out and trying to attempt those passes. So, yeah, I agree with you. There is going to be an emphasis to want to run the football and want to run it effectively.
All right, last thing before we sneak in some questions too. This sucks, quite frankly. But I saw this and I appreciate those who sent it to me on Twitter, but it was kind of right as I was heading out to practice today. A couple people jumped on Twitter and sent me the video of Tarik Cohen. I just cannot believe this happened. So he was live streaming his workout today on his Instagram account, doing an Instagram live. And we know based on, we talked about him a lot last week with that awesome letter to himself that he put out. I should call it awesome, but brave letter. Well done. It was awesome just for him to come out and talk about all the shitty things he's had to deal with. And it just, humanizes the stuff that he's been through. And obviously the Bears let him go. And a nugget in there was like, he's feeling like himself again. He's feeling better. He's still trying to play football because I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to do that again. So he was trying to work his way back, hopefully get into a training camp this summer. And he's live streaming his workout today, and he goes down with a non-contact injury. And, you don't want to speculate on these things, but anybody watched the video, it didn't look good. And I just cannot believe that he's probably, based on what we saw, gonna have to go through another grueling rehab. And if you just read that letter last week and everything he's been through, I think I even said it on the show last week, Nick. Like, you just hope he's back and can play football again. Like, you're rooting for that to happen, and then for this to happen right after it, it's just horrible.
Yeah, and the thing, like, we had, like, again, somebody sent me it on Twitter, and I never even heard it with volume. So I just watched it and I thought it was bad. And then when I got here from, the OTA practice, I turned up the volume and like you hear a pop. And it's like, man, everything that Tarik Cohen's been through over the years, it's like you just wonder why do these things keep happening to him? Like, when will it end? When will he kind of get to the other side of it? So all prayers for Cohen. I'm seeing that, and definitely in the comments here. Hopefully, maybe it's not as bad as it looked, but it sure didn't look good, Adam. And you just wonder. Like, I know someone also put in here, will he ever play again? Like, that's definitely in question. We don't know the severity of what actually the injury was, but it does suck to see for a guy that's already been through so damn much.
Yeah, I hope he stays strong and can get through this. And if he does make it back, and
what a story that would be.
Yeah, what a story that would be, and hopefully that's the story that gets told. So, all right, let's fire through some questions here. Our producer Stephen Nicholas gonna jump these on the screen, and we'll fire through them in our last few minutes on the show. Nomad says, fellas, I'd really like to know what our new receivers look like. Me too. Could not see anything today. I have no idea. No. Okay. So what I could see, there was one throw and catch to Velus Jones Jr.
Okay.
I honestly could not see who threw the ball though.
Yeah.
I think Johns was standing next to me and said it was Fields though. Yeah, I think it was Fields, but it looked like a nice catch and run down the sideline for Velus Jones Jr. Mooney looked like himself from what I could tell.
Mm-hmm.
And
I had a nice running catch. It was Justin Fields to Byron Pringle over the middle of the field. Nobody was near him. That was in team drill too, so he's able to catch it and just turn up field. And again, I don't know if he scores on the play, but was able to catch the ball in stride and turned up field. So that was a good catch. And I also saw former Notre Dame Chris Fink making another catch down somewhere towards the left sideline. I couldn't tell if it was Fields or Simeon or even Peterman for that. But you saw Fink, number 17, I believe, making a catch over there. So yeah, we get bits and pieces, you guys, with how far we were from actually all the action for today.
All right, Justin Wayne asking, what does the very brief eye test tell you guys about this roster compared to previous years? New. I mean, I was having a conversation on the sideline today. Just a lot of new faces, which I understand why that's scary. I understand why that leads people saying they don't have a lot of talent. It also leads me to say we don't know. Let's watch this thing play out on the field in training camp in some of these preseason games. I do think it's a roster full of guys that fit an actual identity and philosophy. And I don't even think it's possible to oversell how much that actually means.
No, I completely agree with that, Adam. I was like making note of who was out there because again, there were like 3 starters that weren't at today's practice. So I was making note of who was kind of practicing on the interior. You saw like an Angelo Blacks and Justin Jones, but you also saw Sam Kamara, 46 out there as the opposite end. It's like, oh well, that's usually Robert Quinn's spot, so that's okay. You probably won't see Sam Kamara, but yeah, just a bunch of new faces, a bunch of young guys getting opportunities, and when it's day 2 of OTAs, that's exactly what you're going to kind of see.
All right, let's see. What's next? How does Coach Eberflus working with players compare to Nagy? Any noticeable difference in style or command? Okay, this is where I hate to just say it's too early, but I think it's too early.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we've noticed from Eberflus so far is a lot of observing. A lot of him watching the offense, I'll say, for a defensive coach. So I think that would be the biggest difference is just like when Nagy came in, you could tell it was almost like Vic Fangio was the head coach of the defense, right? Like Nagy was just like, Vic, this is your show, run it. And he worked on his offense. Really, Flus is looking like that CEO type. He's almost spending more time looking at the offense, in my opinion. But a lot of it's just observation. Just kind of studying what he has on the field. I want to answer this question deeper in training camp when we kind of see more of this happen, really getting closer to games, because I think that'll give us a little bit more of like the one-on-one interactions.
I can't tell you this from Matt Eberflus. Man always wears a white hat. And I think, and Herb Howard are saying, is he the only coach that wears the white hat?
I think so.
Right? I think he's the only one.
I think I've made that observation too, and I like that because it helps me find the head coach easier.
Where's Matt Eberflus at? There he is, white hat. Can find him. I saw someone ask, is number 96? Did someone really get Akeem's number? That was LaCale London, the guy who got a little scrum today. 96 was LaCale London, so someone did get Akeem Hicks's number.
Yeah, and it wasn't even updated on the roster today. We had to figure that out in camp.
Yep.
All right, let's go back to that question from Brandon. Do they trade Monty next offseason if Herbert has another solid showing and with the addition of Ebner? Well, they can't trade him then. Well, I guess they could tag and trade him.
Yeah, I guess you could do that.
So maybe.
I don't know if David Montgomery's future with the Bears after his season is in question. I think just because you don't usually pay running backs, even though the Bears are going to have more capital. But, I think, again, still too early to tell. But if they like what they see in Khalil Herbert, you can get a lot of production out of him.
Yeah.
I can see something happening there.
Tough to tag it and trade a running back, in my opinion. But we'll see. Yeah, it's let's see how the season plays out, quite frankly, and see how much money he earns. All right, what do we got next? Oh, yeah. I saw this. My pal, Nick Wright, went through the whole season. And when I say whole season, he picked every game on the NFL calendar.
Okay.
And when he got done with that, the interesting thing about that exercise is you're not necessarily going through just team by team like we did last week. We went through the whole Bears schedule, but you're kind of like if you're on the Bills, right? And you start with the Bills, like eventually you're going to reach that Bears game and you're going to mark it down as a win, and then that's going to become an L in the Bears column. And so before you even get to the Bears or whatever team, X team, you've already filled out some of those losses or wins, whichever way. So it can surprise you sometimes with how it comes out. He had the Bears at 11-6. I have not had, full honesty, I saw this briefly on Twitter today. I love Nick. And I hope there's a clip of him actually explaining it because I know he's awesome on social media with all the clips that come out from that show. So hopefully it's on there and I'll watch it. Maybe we can discuss it a little bit more on tomorrow's show.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, so kind of curious of what wins he does have pegged for the Bears there to get to 11. But yeah, definitely have to look into that one.
Yeah. Last two questions were kind of repetitive on what we already asked about the coaches and the operation of practice. So we'll get to some of those in the future, but appreciate everybody that jumped in with questions today. A lot of good stuff. It's good to have football to look at and watch. Hopefully next week we can see it a little bit closer. But next Tuesday is another show. And then I think they skip a week.
Then go back next.
And then we go back, but we're gonna have a lot more practices to look at. So, all right, we're out of here. Follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Nicholas Moreano, at CHGO_sports, at CHGO_Bears. Check out our friends at PointsBet. Use that code CHGO. Tomorrow's show, back in studio, our guys from the Bulls podcast, Matt Peck, Big Dave, are going to be there. They're big Bears fans. They have thoughts. They're fired up. We're going to collaborate with them. It's going to be a fun show tomorrow. Back in studio, 11 a.m. We will talk to you then.